sonneurs d'élan.
Hi, I'm Jackie Francis with the Aspen Science Center, and we are at the Aspen Center for Physics campus for our Physics for Kids weekly barbecue. And this week, our theme is Cool Jobs, which hopefully will be a new program for the Aspen Science Center. And we've invited Ian Miller from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and Michael Turner, who's at the University of Chicago Fermilab, an astrophysicist. We have Steph Timothy from the Roaring Fork Surgical Associates, speaking about general surgery. And we have Blair Art, who's from the National Laboratory in Los Alamos, and Chris Lane from ACES, all doing talks tonight in Flug Auditorium on their cool jobs.
Our first speaker has the very unique job of being a paleontologist, which is studying the Earth through fossils that are millions of years old. And this dirt digger works at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and he also ran the Snow Mastodon dig in 2010 right here. So give it up for our first Cool Jobs presenter, Mr. Ian Miller.
So in 2010, a bulldozer driver found a mastodon bone. Well, actually, it was a mammoth bone in Snowmass Village. His name was Jesse Steele, and he was a third-generation bulldozer driver. He's bulldozing along, and he flipped up a couple of bones over the front of his bulldozer blade. And he was shocked, to say the least. He said he was scared. And he called the museum, or actually his supervisor called the museum. And we're in the business of responding to those kinds of things, because that was the moment of discovery. Jesse Steele actually had the moment of discovery. We came up, it turned into a world-class find. One of the finest Ice Age paleontological sites anywhere on the planet is just 15 miles from here, right by Snowmass Village. We collected 6,000 giant bones from more than 50 species of Ice Age animals. And we've got a team of 45 scientists working on it to understand what Colorado was like about 100,000 years ago, right before the first people set foot on this continent. And so what I brought for a little fun show and tell is a cast of an ulna of a mastodon from Snowmass. So this is the ulna. Does anybody know what your ulna is? Where's your ulna? Right, so forearm, you've got a radius and an ulna. This is the front foreleg of a mastodon, right here. And they were from mastodons alone, which are like mammoths, but they are different. I can talk about that later if you're interested. We found more than 3,500 bones. It's the finest mastodon site in the world. There are more mastodons there than anywhere else, and we only dug 10% of what was there out of the ground, because that's all that was going to be sort of lost because of the dam. If you guys are interested in seeing the real bones, we have a prep lab being run in Snowmass Village this summer, and we have a couple staff members up there preparing bones from the dig that you can go and see and interact with and stuff like that. So I think I'll leave it with that. I'm going to leave this up here, and at the end you guys can come take your picture with it. You should hold it up and pose with it however you want, and throw it over your shoulder. We call these Flintstone moments. Hold up the big bone and have some fun with it.
Some call him the CEO of ACES or the bird nerd, but most just call him Chris Lane. Everyone welcome Chris Lane.
Who here likes to walk in a forest? That's probably my favorite thing in the world to do, to go camping. ACES, we work on protecting the forests. Pretty cool. We work on sustainable agriculture. ACES is working on teaching the world where food comes from and how to grow it in a sustainable way at our Rock Bottom Ranch, 22 miles from here. And I wouldn't say it was a mistake, but I was so determined to teach my kids that lesson that I bought live chickens from Rock Bottom Ranch. And yes, you know where this is going. And I brought them home. I was going to get 10, and I didn't realize these things are as big as turkeys. They're huge. And they're all natural. There's no hormones or antibiotics. I didn't know chickens, to the adults here, I didn't know natural chickens could grow so big. I thought you had to stick them with chemicals to get them that big, you know, the unnatural stuff. I go to the Rock Bottom Ranch and say, I'm going to give me 10 chickens. We're taking them home. We're going to process them and eat them. When they were that big, the guy, my director there, said, well, maybe you're biting off more than you could chew. Why don't you try 4? So I tried 4. I brought them home. I had a social engagement. My kids got their hands on them, and mistake number 1 was hiring a babysitter from ACES who had the chickens named. We had the chickens on a leash walking around the neighborhood. But then the next day we had to process these guys. So that means, kids, you know, if you've ever eaten meat, not to gross anybody out, you have to kill the animal and process it so that you can cook it. And we ate fresh chicken that night. And the next day when I went to do it, we had a crowd of children around me as I did this deed to the animal, but I taught my kids, every time you put a piece of meat in your mouth, if you ate a hamburger tonight, an animal gave his life, so we should have respect for that animal, and maybe even limit the amount of food we eat. So sustainable agriculture is what ACES works on as well. Restoration, kids, I got bad news for you. Your adult parents have not done the best job at protecting your planet. Believe it or not, no matter what they've said, we have hurt the planet to some degree. So ACES is working on restoring it. We're doing forest restoration projects. We're doing peat bog restoration. And we're working on adults 5,000 acres up in the Hunter-Smuggler Creek and creating improved habitat and improved forest ecology, a more resilient forest, a forest that may not burn as easily. And last, I'll conclude with one of the coolest things about my job. I get, and Rebecca Weiss, is she in the room? There she is. Rebecca, who is an expert ornithologist, is so gracious enough. This is a perk of my job to let me go birding every once in a while, and I do have the name Bird Nerd in the office, and I'm happy with that name.
Instead of saving the environment like Chris, surgeons have the job of saving people. Our next speaker is a general surgeon at Valley View Hospital in Glenwood Springs. So let's give Steph a round of applause.
And ever since I was 10, I walked around and told people, I'm going to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. Now, who at age 10 walks around and says that, I don't know. But I grew up on a farm. I saw a lot of birth. I saw a lot of death. And it really kind of fascinated me on how does the body work. As a surgeon, basically our job is to investigate injuries and ailments. So when you get hurt and you come through the emergency room or you get sick, we're possibly one that you might see. So I wanted to show you, and hopefully no one's too queasy, but I really wanted to show you the cool art of surgery and why we do what we do, but also to kind of understand where we've advanced. Because since the 1950s, we've advanced to transplants, hand transplants, face transplants, and having been formerly in the military, we actually experienced a lot of traumatic amputations, and that means where you lose your arm and your legs. Well, we've recently, in the past 10 years, have the first successful patient with bilateral arm transplants from the military. So the field, again, has just been a boon to what we can to make a small nick, but it's actually only about a half a centimeter to a centimeter in size. And this that's going to come up here basically will show you the picture from the inside. So this is a recent patient of mine, and this is one of the most common procedures that we perform, and it's for appendicitis. And in the old days, we used to do a cut like this or a cut like this. Now we use 2 to 3 small little incisions to basically take it out.
This next presenter is a little less hands-on than a surgical doctor and instead uses his smarts to figure things out. Working with Fermi Labs, Michael Turner is a theoretical cosmologist and has his head up in the clouds, or a lot higher than that, and puts his mind to work out all the distant things in space. So if you please give it up for Michael Turner.
The theorists are the ones who wave their hands. So we don't do any of the hard work. We don't take the pictures of the universe. We try to understand the universe and ask the big questions. And so I'm going to get to this image, which is the world's most famous image, but I just want to see what people know about the universe. We know about the universe.
It's expanding.
That's my favorite one. What my job is, which and these other jobs were really, really cool, and I feel kind of bad having the coolest job, but whatever. So what theoretical cosmologists do, what cosmologists do, is try to understand the universe. And the universe, somebody said it, is its best feature, it's really, really big. Does anybody know how big it is? Yeah.
It's infinite.
Oh yeah, it could be infinite, but let's do, that's right, it could be infinite. You got me on that one. But let's do, what's the smallest it could be? So, how big do we know it is for sure? Because infinite is hard. Yeah.
13.5 billion years.
Yeah, okay, so we know that it's at least about 15 billion light years across. And how big is a light year? Does anybody know that? Yeah, how big is a light year?
Light year is the distance light travels in a year.
Yeah, and how long is it? How big is that?
It's like 8 times 10 to the 8 times 20.
Yeah, so it's a really big number. So, you know, chemistry is kind of exciting, but it was the science of the 19th century. Well, it's not personal, it's just a fact. And we think most of the dark matter is the predominant stuff in the universe. We don't think it's made out of atoms. It's a new kind of matter that they're trying. Has anybody heard of the Large Hadron Collider and what did they discover there? Anybody know what they discovered at the Large Hadron Collider a year ago? Even more galaxies. The Higgs particle, but okay. And so we think that the dark matter is a new form of matter that we can make in an accelerator. And so for the last...
Well, our final speaker here is a little more down to earth, you could say, and focuses on problems in the present and even those in the future. And we're still trying to figure out exactly what a counterterrorism engineer does in the daily work day, because we don't really know. But hopefully he can shed some light on that topic. So let's hear it for our counterterrorism engineer and final speaker, Blair.
Engineer. I'm an R&D engineer at Los Alamos National Laboratory. I didn't set out to be an engineer at Los Alamos National Laboratory. Ironically, much like the paleontologist, I went to school to be a doctor. You got to bring a dinosaur bone. I've got this big plastic thing. So let me explain what this is. A lot of the work that we do in my organization is we do work for the military, and we come up with novel solutions to problems that they have. How many of you have heard, and I'm a wounded warrior supporter, how many of you have heard about people getting hurt by improvised explosive devices in either Iran or Afghanistan? Right? It's a problem. So this is called a closer. How many of you guys play baseball? How many people know baseball? What's a closer? He's the guy who comes in to close the game, right? This is the closer. So, believe it or not, fill this with water. And I can tell you that we've tested it with everything. So bodily fluids work. So if you're in the field and you don't have a gallon of water, if you want to aim it, you turn on your laser pointer, wherever it'll show up. You can aim it. Walk away at least 15 feet and have it pointing in the opposite direction. And you hit the detonator. You pull the plug, exploding bridge wire. That detonation wave creates what is called a jet. That water forms a jet that travels at 15 kilometers a second. It's called a stretching jet, which means the tip of the jet of the water is traveling faster than the tail of the jet of the water. So the jet is stretching over time. It'll go about, 15 to 20 feet and have penetrating power. But at zero standoff, it'll punch an inch of steel. Water will punch an inch of steel. Okay? So you can see the conventional application of the tool. The way they utilize this in the field, we characterize it because one of the questions you might ask yourself is if you happen to aim this thing and it hits the high explosives in the IED, what happens? Well, guess what? It blows up because explosives don't really care what the shock wave is that hits it. Even if it's water, it's going to detonate those explosives. But if I can control the way I detonate those explosives and I don't put men at risk, that's not a bad day.
Okay, well, my name's Jackie Francis. I'm the Executive Director of the Aspen Science Center, and I want to thank you guys for coming today. And I hope you've enjoyed our speakers, and please come back and